what I'm going to talk about is really intentional communities and how they relate to designing a virtual community. So the name of the talk, I guess, was a little bit of a bait and switch because eco-villages are actually just one type of intentional community. And I'm going to be talking more about intentional communities in general. And we're going to look at some of the social aspects of community and then some of the design aspects and how we can translate these ideas of real world village principles into our virtual communities. I'm drawing on information from my architecture background, and I'm also really involved in tiny house, the tiny house movement. I have a Facebook group that is locally based here in Nova Scotia that has 15,000 members, and it's about tiny houses, intentional community, off-grid living. So I have my finger on the pulse of how people are coming together to live and work in community here in Nova Scotia. And I'm also a graphic and web designer, and I teach people how to market their businesses on TikTok. And I also love being in the forest, and I also create a lot of content about foraging and nature and all of that. So one of the main things that ties the community together is a shared purpose. Like, what are the objectives? A purpose can help you really filter what is necessary in your community and what is maybe superfluous, and can also help you decide on the design and the structure of what tools and resources you need. Like GoBrunch, you can embed so much and have so many different purposes for different rooms. So really being clear on your purpose can help you decide like what you want in your community, and also help you it can keep you focused because there's only so much time to design, which is hard because I do find creating GoBrunch rooms addictive. Just as a couple examples of purpose, Oroville is to realize human unity in diversity. So they have people from all over the world living there. Our eco-village is one in BC, and they want to educate, inspire, and transform by co-creating a thriving learning community and a permaculture demonstration site. So, it may not be as specific or say strict rules as if it's a live-in real-world community, but it's still really important to define who you want in the community, not only for you and the kind of community you want to build, but you want your members to also feel comfortable in your community. And then another aspect of a lot of real-world communities is they have some kind of onboarding. This is an image of Oroville visitor space. This is a visitor center. And a lot of communities will have a tour guide or an open house day or things like that. And in the virtual community that I'm a part of, the Catalyst, run by Marisa, she does tours. She has a public space that's separate from the member space. I'll talk a bit more about that in future slides. But yeah, now we'll see how some of these principles relate more to actual GoBrunch design. One thing that I think is really special about GoBrunch as opposed to Zoom is this idea that our learning and our memory is really based in location. Like, we can absorb a lot more information. We link our memories to places. And in GoBrunch, you can go from place to place for different purposes. So instead of thinking, well, I need a room with 50 people and I need a room with 2 people and, I need different sizes of rooms, we can start to think, well, I need different visual aspects for different moods and different purposes, different activities. Like, what do you want people to remember about that space? So when an architect starts to conceive of a building or a landscape, we often start with this thing called a bubble diagram. And This is a tool that I also used to start thinking about my GoBrunch world, because that's what you're really creating. You have so many different spaces. It's so much more than just a Zoom room. So this kind of gets you out of, helps you look at the overview instead of starting with all of the details and, where do I want this furniture and what buttons do I want? You can kind of think of how the spaces connect. And that's important because the way our memory is linked to location, it is often along a path. If you've ever heard of this idea of the memory palace, this is a mnemonic device where you envision a place, and as you're going along the path, you have different things that you want to remember in different locations. So I kind of think of GoBrunch could be a space like that if you have a path going through different locations. We're kind of creating a narrative, like we go from space to space. So here you're outside the house, and then you go inside the house, and you have different activities, or you could have different numbers of people in each space. Conference room, and then I have one going out to the balcony. So you can think of it like making a pathway. Another thing that when you're starting to design, architects will often place these bubbles along a gradient of different factors that affect the space. One of these is private to public. So spaces may go from the most open, like you have a visitor center, it's open to outsiders, and then you move through the spaces, and then the most private space is maybe like a two-person office, or the manager's office or something like that. Another example of a gradient that these spaces might fall on in the real world, for example, it might be loud to quiet. Maybe your piece of land is beside a highway, and so you have the noisy spaces to the quiet spaces farther from the highway. Or maybe it's light to dark if you have something south facing, or heavy shade from the forests, something like that. And so, but I think private to public is the most relevant for GoBrunch design, because you can have these different kinds of spaces. You can have free spaces. Maybe you're doing public talks, or you have this welcoming, like a visitor center for everyone as a part of your onboarding process. And then you have private spaces where you have small meeting rooms and small groups. So another thing that you can do in GoBrunch is a co-working space gives you a whole collection of rooms. And you can actually have more than one. Like you can have this gradient of public to private spaces sort of within one co-working room, but you could also have, or within one co-working space, but you can actually make more than one co-working space and have one that you don't share the links and one that you do share the links. So you've got a public space that's kind of there for anyone. That might be where you do public talks or free co-working days, kind of like an open house type of thing. And then you can have another co-working space for your paid members. And when you click on the All Rooms button at the bottom of the screen, that one opens up just the options of rooms that are in that particular co-working space. But if you use this little navigation button, you can put in links to other rooms. So if we're going back to this kind of path idea, these could actually be in different spaces. And one thing you can actually do is in one of the, say, more private areas of one co-working space, then you could have a navigation link to the other co-working space if you have a reason for people to go along a path. And I think this is also really important, because if you think about this culture, how everybody has started working from home now, in an office building, it doesn't really count as a third place, but think about the water cooler, where you go to the water cooler and that's where you bump into whoever else is there and you have your little chit chat. And we don't have that working from home. So having a place that's dedicated for not work, or kind of, even if your community is a co-working community or has a specific purpose, I think it's great to have kind of the extra third space that has no purpose, where you invite random chit chat, people can drop in there, bump into each other, network, chit chat, gossip, whatever. Because that's an important aspect of life that is really changing in the modern world. Public libraries are an example of the third space, like one of the few examples